When I built this bike 18 months ago, I spec'd it specifically for where I live, which is the extremely mountainous region of Essex. Alright, Essex is largely pretty flat, which is why I chose an 11 to 28 cassette at the back when I built it, as I really didn't think I'd need anything more than 28 teeth to do any climbing around here. And largely, I haven't. There are a couple of naughty little climbs around here, but nothing really to compare with the likes of, I don't know, the Lake District in the north of England. However, in exactly 1 week from now, I'll be travelling up to the lakes to take part in the Action Medical Research charity triathlon. As I've mentioned before, it's not a traditional triathlon, as it consists of a 40-mile bike ride, a 2-mile open-top canoe, and then an 11-mile hike up and down Skiddaw, which is the highest peak in the lakes. Now, the canoe and the hike, not really concerned about, but with a 34-tooth smallest chainring at the front of the bike and only a maximum of 28 teeth on the biggest cog at the back, I am very much concerned with taking on some of the monster climbs around Keswick. So, what better way to allay that concern than to buy a brand new 11 to 34 cassette, which I've just received courtesy of Merlin Cycles. And here it is. So, this will easily solve my problem, right? Well, yes, but also no, because as well as the cassette, I need to buy a new chain, as my current one won't be long enough to go around the larger cassette, and that I have here. But so long as I have the cassette and a chain, that's now solved the problem, hasn't it? Well, yes, but also no again, because I also had to buy a new larger cage derailleur to account for the longer chain, and I'll explain all this in a minute. All in all though, this has cost me quite a bit of money. For those interested, it was £108.89 to be precise. That was £44.99 for the cassette, £47.95 for the derailleur, and £15.95 for the chain. Now, the cassette and derailleur are both Shimano 105 R7000, which matches what I have on the bike already. However, the chain is an Ultegra one. Now, I don't need an Ultegra chain, but it was on offer, and it was nearly half the price of the 105 version, so why wouldn't you? I really don't think I will notice any difference with an Ultegra chain over an R7000 105 on me. Right, so first things first, I need to get the old derailleur off, and when I hold the new one up against it, you can see how much bigger it is. So this old one is a short cage derailleur, and the cage is this part here, which the chain passes through and around these jockey wheels. Shimano call their short cage design the SS, whereas the new one is a medium cage called a GS. There is a long cage derailleur version you can buy, but they are generally for mountain bikes or gravel bikes, where the rear cassette is much larger, anywhere up to around 50 teeth. Which would need a much longer chain, and therefore a much longer cage to hold the tension in the chain. And that's the point of these different cage lengths. It's all to do with keeping enough tension in the different chain lengths needed for these larger cassettes. If you only had a small cage derailleur for a very long chain, then you'd find that your chain would continually slap against the chainstay here at the back of the bike. But worse than that, you'd run the risk of the chain slipping on the cassette or on the chainring at the front. So because I need a longer chain for the larger cassette that's going on here, I need a longer derailleur cage. Okay, so with all of that explained and out of the way, it's time to get the old chain, cassette and derailleur off the bike. Okay, so now with everything off, I thought it'd be really interesting to see the weight differences between the old 1128 setup and the new 11 to 34. So first goes on the cassette, and that weighs in at 272 grams. So now if we add the new 11 to 34, we would expect this to be heavier. And yes, quite substantially heavier, 359 grams. So that's nearly 90 grams heavier. So then on we go to the derailleur, and here's the old one, which as you can see is very dirty. And that weighs in at 221 grams. And then the new derailleur, longer cage, comes in at 228. So not too big a difference there, but still heavier, which again you would expect from the longer cage. And then finally, the chain. Now, this old chain is a Clark's self-lubricating chain, and it's the same chain that I had to put on there back last year when I did London to Paris, and my chain broke, and I had to go into a local Halfords, believe it or not, to change the chain for me and be able to complete the ride. Not forgetting the quick links. That comes in at 237 grams. Now, this will be quite interesting to see because, as I say, the new chain is Ultegra. And the reason you pay more for Ultegra generally is because it is lighter. Also, there's, other reasons like it's more durable and longer lasting. But the main reason is that it's lighter. So 237 for the old Clark's chain. Let's see how this one weighs in. Not forgetting the quick links. Wow, so that comes in at 250 grams. So 13 grams heavier than the Clark's self-lubricating chain. In fairness to this chain, I haven't yet cut it to size, so I don't know. There could be a few links that I need to take out of this. So that may make it lighter. And I may well, if I remember, weigh it again at the end to see if there is much of a difference. This is a 110 link chain currently. I'm not sure how many links are on the old Clark's one at the moment, but it will be interesting to see once I've cut the links off if that makes any difference to the weight. So that's quite interesting then. Overall, there is a 107 gram difference between the old stuff and the new stuff, with the old derailleur cassette and chain weighing in at 730 grams and the new ones weighing in at 837, give or take a few grams when I take the links off of the chain. Now, 100 grams isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, and hopefully the fact that I now have that 34 tooth cassette on the back, or at least I will have when I put it all together, over when I had the 28, hopefully that means that the weight gain will be negated and I will still find it a lot easier to climb on the hills. Right, so time to put this all back together and see how much indexing needs to be done with the new derailleur and the cassette. I'm hoping it will work straight out of the box, but I know that's probably wishful thinking, and I'm sure I'll have to mess around a little bit with the high-low limit screws to get it shifting properly. But let's get it all back together now. Okay, so the cassette is now back on, and that is spinning beautifully. Apologies for blowing out your ears there if you're listening with headphones on, and they're up at full volume. So now that the cassette's back on, I can put the wheel back in. Okay, so now the new cassette and the derailleur on, it's time to put the chain on and to resize it. So I did a bit of an explainer when I converted Jimmy's old 90s mountain bike into a drop bar gravel bike a little while ago. It probably wasn't the best explained, and I'm really not the best at explaining exactly how to measure these chains. Largely what you do is bypass the derailleur but put the chain on the largest cog at the back and the largest chainring at the front, measure where the chain meets, and then add on 2 more chain links to that and cut at that chain link. Then, once you've fed it all the way through the derailleur and use your quick links, that should then be the perfect size. Again, that's not the best explanation for it. If you want a better explanation for it, head over to the Park Tools YouTube channel, as everybody's favourite bike mechanic teacher, Calvin Jones, has an awesome video over there and explains exactly how to do it in minute detail, and he will tell you everything you need to know about sizing a new chain. Okay, so this is probably more luck than judgment, but as I mentioned earlier, this Ultegra chain is 110 links long, and when I put the 2 ends together, they meet perfectly with 2 links additional. So as I mentioned earlier, you add the 2 links on after the chain meets, and that should be your perfect size. So, as I say, more luck than judgment, but this chain actually fits with not having to cut it whatsoever. However, that does mean that there's no extra weight that we can take off of the measurements we took earlier, so there really is 107 grams difference between this whole new cassette, derailleur and chain over the old one. Again, I don't think that's going to cause me too many issues. Having the 34 at the back now, I think, will far override the small matter of 100 grams. However, I know there are some weight weenies out there who get really hot and flustered about these things. But yes, 34 at the back, I think, will be perfectly fine for me with just 100 gram added extra weight. Okay, so now I'm going to get the master links. I'm going to feed the chain through the derailleur, and then that should pretty much be that. And then I need to head out on a ride, quick test ride, just to make sure that everything's working properly. And I'll take it up a local hill to me just to see if this £108.89 was well spent. However, having played around with this chain for quite a bit now, the one other thing I'm going to need to do before I go away with this next weekend is remove all of this engineering grease that they put on to stop the chain rusting in transit and while it's being stored. It is so sticky, and this stuff will pick up all sorts of road dirt. I'm actually going to completely strip this of any oil whatsoever, so inside the rollers as well, and I'm going to end up waxing it. Again, I know that's a very divisive subject, but I much prefer the non-mess with a wax chain. I don't like the big greasy chain ring tattoo on the back of my calf. I just prefer to wax chain. So once I've got this all fitted and I've taken it out for a test ride, I'm going to take the chain off again, completely strip it down with degreaser, and then I'll do a hot wax dip. I may make a video on that at some point, but I probably don't have time now because I've got so much to get ready for before this weekend. But there will, at some point, I'm sure, be a chain waxing video. If you definitely want that, comment below and I'll try and get it done as quickly as possible. But for now, as I say, let's get this chain together and get outside. Okay, so I guess this really was wishful thinking to think that this would be indexed fully straight out of the box. As you can see, that won't push any further over. So I'm going to have to play with the high-low limit screws just here and here so that can push further over. And also to make it line up more with this 11-tooth cog just here. As you can see, the jockey wheel here is just a little bit too far over to connect with this 11-tooth cog. So I'll play with these high-low limit screws to move the derailleur out, first of all, when I'm in top gear, and then I'll push the derailleur all the way over and then undo the limit screw so that pushes further over to the left so it connects properly with the largest tooth chainring. Okay, so that's definitely more aligned now. You can see the jockey wheel is aligned with the 11-speed cog at the bottom, and it's difficult to capture at the right angle for the largest sprocket, but you'll have to take it from me that they are actually aligned there at the back. So now there should be no danger of the chain when I'm pushing up into first gear, of it falling over the top of the cassette and getting buried in the spokes, but also when I'm coming downhill, on the 11, it's not going to get stuck between the dropout and the cassette. Okay, so out on the road, going down this hill next to my house, absolutely no problems at all, but then that's not too much of a surprise because I still have the 11-tooth cog as the smallest cog for going downhill. The biggest difference is when I start going up the hill around the corner from my house. So let's see how this goes. Right, so I've come to a dead stop at the bottom of this hill because I don't want to take any speed into this whatsoever. So all of the work is being done by that 34-tooth cassette. Although now I have come to a stop, I'm actually a bit concerned that I'm not going to be able to get going again. This is quite steep, this hill, so let's see how this goes. Ah, can't get clipped in. Right, I'm in. Oh boy. Speed bumps had that extra little bit of spiciness. Well, that feels like an absolute dream coming up there, and I don't think it's hyperbole to say it feels like a different bike. I'm more than happy with that. So I think it's fair to say that I'm very happy with how that's turned out. The only thing left to do now is go up to the lakes and see if it works there. We've just discovered that we're doing hike, canoe, cycle. So not cycle, canoe, hike as I was hoping and expected. So I'm not too sure how the legs are going to be on the 40-mile bike ride after I've done an 11-mile hike up and down Skiddaw, but otherwise that video will be coming out next week and I will see you then. Take care guys, thanks for watching.